All right. So kicking us off this afternoon is Tatyana Mamut, or Dr. Tatyana Mamut, rather, Chief Product Officer at Nextdoor. She is our executive advisor of advancing women in products. So she's been with us since day one. And so love to hear from her and the first track from academia to CPO.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me? I speak pretty loudly anyway. So excited to see so many amazing people here to gather together, talk about especially how do we rise as female product leaders? How do we shift the decision making among technology companies to really be truly working toward the betterment of our customers and our users and really the world, right? And I think a big part of this is just looking at not just the gender diversity not a lot of gender diversity, but like female product leaders and our of course wonderful male allies, looking across this room, but also just the makeup of all of you, right? And how much diversity we bring in terms of how we think about technology products and how important that is for any technology product that's being built for scale, which I think is something that all of us are doing. Global products built for scale require lots of different points of view and lots of different perspectives to get it right. And so I was asked to talk about my progression and my career progression from being an anthropologist to then going into enterprise software and now consumer, so sort of social network tech. Like, how does that happen? A lot of people are like, that is crazy. In fact, it's not so crazy. This is me. Actually me. This is where I come from. I come from Eastern Ukraine, which is the not good part of Ukraine. For those of you with like tech teams in Ukraine, this is like a not that part. And so, come from a very different experience than I think a lot of like the, I would say, more traditional kind of backgrounds that you think of people who are well connected to get into the technology or finance world. So I wanted to start this. This is a tweet from this weekend, October 26th. And this struck me as a great way to start this talk because I wanted you guys to focus on the last two sentences. The internet has allowed us to see all of humanity. The internet has. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Part of today's anxiety is wrestling with what we can now see. So there's a perspective, I think, in Silicon Valley that it is technology that creates a perspective on humanity and society. As if we in the United States and people with power just got to see what the rest of the world has been experiencing, right, all their lives. And I think that this is a particularly myopic and kind of ignorant tweet, as if there was no way to see humanity other than the internet before this point. It would have been crazy and impossible to talk to somebody from outside Silicon Valley. It would have been completely unthinkable to leave Palo Alto or Stanford and try to actually live and work with people outside of Silicon Valley, because of course the internet is the only thing that could allow us to see any part of humanity outside of the area between San Francisco and San Jose. So this is why I wanted to start and say, what does an anthropologist leading product bring to a perspective, and why is it possible, and why is it desirable to have people with diverse backgrounds, experiences, life stories leading product, and especially products that hope to scale globally? So I'm going to do a little exercise with you to start. Imagine that your company is building a new big product that they hope to scale, and they're hiring a team of 2 product leaders who are going to make all the strategic decisions about what this product should be. And they've got 3 candidates. Candidate A, and they've got a test, and the test has 10 questions. And these 10 questions are the things that they have determined, the team needs to know in order to build this product well and scale it well and be successful, or they think so. Okay, so these are the results of the test that these 3 candidates take. Candidate A gets 8 out of 10 questions right. Candidate B gets 7 out of 10 right. Candidate C gets 4 out of 10 right. Who are the 2 people who would likely get hired in your organization? A and B? Why A and B? They got the highest scores. They got the higher scores, and we are a meritocracy. We hire the best candidates. We hire only the smartest people with the highest SAT scores who went to Harvard and Stanford, right? Sound familiar to anybody? All right. So let's look at what they actually scored. Oh, and the second question, who is the most valuable candidate? Who's going to get the highest offer? A. Got it. Okay, so let's look at what they actually scored. All right. Now, if you were making the hiring decision, who would you hire? A and C. A and C. Who is the most valuable candidate? C. Why C? Provides diversity. What else? Anything else? They know the answers to questions that nobody else does, so they are the most valuable. They are not fungible with another candidate. A and B are fairly fungible with each other. So, in a world where you might imagine that the skills required to build a really successful product include 3 skill sets, and you can argue with me if you think I'm wrong. Understanding technology, understanding business, and understanding humans, right? The key is to have a team that has a good balance of these 3. It's not to overemphasize one versus the other, right? And so one of the things that's really hard, though, in our technology companies is, what do we have a lot of people in leadership knowing how to do? Tech. Most of our CEOs, how many of your chief product officers have a tech background? How many have a business background? How many have a humanities or social science background? So now we see, right, a certain situation that we get into, which is not to say that all the CPOs need to have a human background, right? But it's important for in product or organizations and product teams to have a strategy to make sure Nassim is a computer scientist, software engineer, and so really valuable, right? We also have people who come from design, who work very closely with us. We have people who come from the business world, right, who are product leaders as well on the team. So creating a team that spans all 3 of these areas is really important. And so when one is a candidate C type of person, whether that's a different background because of your ethnicity or your race or your perspective, your background, and your experience, what happens when you come into a team of all B's and C's? You think is it super welcoming and awesome? Right? Because when you don't know the very basic, when you don't know the answers to questions 1, 2, and 3, everybody else on the team is like, you're an idiot, right? You don't even know the most basic things about how to code, which I don't, right? But how do you actually help your team and your leadership understand that there are other ways of developing both empathy with the other skill sets, but also leading a team where you're helping the organization move forward and seeing the things that maybe the leadership doesn't necessarily see? So in a lot of cases, I think our organizations look kind of like this. I found this Google image search, and I think this is really a really great analogy for organizations that keep continuing to hire the types of people that look like themselves in leadership, because they're putting on blinders and imagining that only the internet can give them a perspective into humanity. You can only learn about humanity by looking at the internet. And it's because they're not actually hiring people or valuing the people that they do hire in the organization that have a different perspective. All right, so a little bit about me. My first degree is actually in economics. And why I moved into the softer social sciences or anthropology. So I was a neoclassical economist to my core through college. I worked at a think tank, which was run by a student of Jeffrey Sachs, for anybody who's old enough to know Jeffrey Sachs, who kind of led all the shock therapy reforms in Bolivia, then Poland, then the former Soviet Union and Russia. And I wrote papers on the Russian economic transition based on a neoclassical economic model presented to the United Nations. And I was like, yes, there is pent-up demand. Rational economic theory will work in Russia, and it's all going to be awesome. And it was not. The Russian economy collapsed in 1998. Life expectancy plummeted. The best and the brightest minds of these Harvard neoclassical economists were just completely wrong, and there was a lot of scholarship at that time about how devastating these reforms that were based on economic models of human behavior, how devastating the actual institution of those policies in a social context actually was for the country. And so that caused me to step back and be like, wait a second, maybe math doesn't have all the answers. Imagine that. So, this is not me, this is Margaret Mead. So I started reading a lot of anthropology, and human beings are complex. They have a lot of stories that they tell in their minds about who they are, why they do the things they do, the mental models that drive them and open up the world for them, what people want and what they need. It cannot be mathematically modeled. It needs to be deeply understood. And through anthropology, I also started working at Leo Burnett in Moscow, which was a very interesting experience because I got to actually launch new products for Procter & Gamble in an emerging country. And so when you try to launch a brand like Secret deodorant to a country that doesn't think that body odor is a problem, you learn a lot of things about the things that you took for granted that other people just don't share. You're like, but aren't you self-conscious when you smell? And they're like, no. No, I'm not. So you learn that the things that you think are natural and normal and taken for granted, how could anyone live like that? Those things are culturally, contextually dependent. And struggling with these issues day in and day out of what do you do when you have unintended consequences like women are buying Secret to put on their young son's feet instead of their own underarms? What does that mean for the brand? What does that mean for how we market it? What does that mean for our advertising messaging? Things that you would never think if you just stayed in your little bubble in the United States. And that experience of launching Secret and Tide, where, you know, it's interesting. So we all think that everybody washes their laundry in a laundromat or in a washing machine. A lot of people in the world don't. And you have to think about how they actually deal with water and with suds and with notions of cleanliness, right, in different contexts. And so launching these brands again and again and again, the most personal things about our personal bodies and how the things that we take for granted as natural here are just not natural in other places, really helped me as a technology executive for many years. And that's the type of thinking, that's the type of mind-opening experience that helps diminish myopia, right, when you're actually trying to build a global tech product. So again, how many of your chief product officers have lived and worked in an emerging market? Okay, how many of your chief product officers have never lived and worked in an emerging market? Keep your hands up, and keep your hand up if you have a global product. Right, so global products that are led by people who have never lived or worked in an emerging market. This is problematic, in my opinion. All right, so another piece of it, and seeing all of humanity, which only the internet could help us see. During my research in Russia, I traveled to the Trans-Siberian twice, from Lithuania all the way to Mongolia, actually down to Beijing as well, by myself, just sort of with a backpack, getting on trains, meeting people, getting off trains, and really interesting stuff happened. I met a child who was trafficked from his village by a pedophile. And he, in Novosibirsk, and true story, and he's 17, he was taken out of his village, found by a pedophile who was scouring the very poor Russian villages. He's very blonde, very good looking, young boy, and his parents were alcoholics, not great parents. And so the situation was very complex. And you could see how this trade of children happens and how it feeds upon itself. The internet is not the only way to have seen this. And the internet hides the faces and the personal stories and the complexity of things that happen on the internet. And seeing that firsthand and experiencing it firsthand helps you understand what's happening in different places and helps you make better decisions when you're making decisions around product. So one of the things that we decided at Nextdoor is when we're relaunching our groups product, we would never have secret groups. Because secrecy feeds negative things. Even though our members said to us very clearly, we want some of our groups to be secret, the question of what are the trade-offs of having secret groups, especially in the United States and globally, and promising that nobody would be able to see them, the potential downside of that was far greater, we decided, than the potential upside. And that type of decision-making needs to come from understanding humanity and all the different ways that human beings think, both the good side and the bad side. Working at so from there, seeing all of this, I was going to go into academia. Never actually went into academia, never actually became a professor. IDEO was looking for someone who was an anthropologist to help lead global teams, do a lot of research, and at this point, I really had very little experience in tech. Got to IDEO, and they were like, oh, you do all this interesting, humanitarian work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I worked with them, worked in Africa. This is me in the field in Ethiopia, plowing a field. I'm terrible at that. Never hire me to plow a field. Not high value on that part. So really kind of doing a lot of work internationally, doing a lot of projects around mobile technologies to help shareholder farmers understand how to market their goods better, understand where prices are better. And so that actually led, I happened to have been right after this trip to Ethiopia in Kenya. Interesting thing happened in Kenya when I was there. M-Pesa got really big. You guys know M-Pesa, right? mobile payments in Kenya. M-Pesa got really big, and I got to see it firsthand, and I was talking to people, and they were transferring money into their M-Pesa accounts because they were unbanked, or, and so this is a way for them to save money. It was just really interesting, again, human activity that was not happening in the Western world, but was happening outside, and it really helped you see that mobile payments and mobile money back in 2008 really had interesting legs. So we came back, and then we got Visa came in, and they said, hey, we want to explore mobile payments and mobile money. And IDEO looked around, and they're like, who knows something about that? You, Tatyana, you know something about that. Why don't you start leading these big mobile payments experiences for Visa? So did that for a little while. Then they were like, oh, we need somebody to do a big digital platform development. Who knows something about digital mobile platforms? Hey, you did that Visa project. Why don't you start doing that? So again, it was like this build of understanding human beings and just being really open to what people are doing that led to new kind of opportunities to develop bigger and bigger digital platforms. So this was the unlock to my digital career. So from IDEO, went to Salesforce. Again, understanding people. Look, enterprise customers are people too. It's all, as long as you're building a product where people make the decision of whether to use it or not, whether to buy it or not, it's the same thing. There's actually, I believe, very little difference between B2B and B2C products. It's all people all the way down. It's all people. As long as the robots aren't making the purchase or the use decisions, as long as the AI is not actually making the decision about whether to use the product or not, it's all just people. So led the Lightning experience. Redesign, any of you from Salesforce? Yay! So Lightning now is very big. I think 75% of Salesforce customers now are on Lightning. Last statistic I heard. So that was a really kind of big thing. And then I came here, AWS, built a new team, new product, started actually kind of understanding technology and the underpinnings of technology a little bit more because it was a very technical product that we were building. And one of the things that I learned at Amazon is this sort of concept of customer obsession. So since we're at Amazon, I wanted to play this little tape of Jeff Bezos giving a talk because it's really indicative of how important understanding people and customer obsession is to great product experiences. Can we play the video? Just click it. I have to click here. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're going to skip that, I think. Hold on, where is it? Oh, I think I just messed it up. Okay. I'm going to skip over that. But let me tell you what he says. He says, being customer obsessed means being customer obsessed instead of, you can look this up later, instead of being technology obsessed, and instead of being product obsessed, instead of being business model obsessed, and instead of being competitor obsessed. Meaning that when you prioritize the human customer, the human being, that's when you unlock the potential to create great innovation and great products, right? We as product leaders, we have great partners in engineering. We have great partners in data science. We have great partners in business and finance, right? Our job is to be really close and deep with the customer and develop an intuition for the customer. Sorry, I think sorry. Can I get some help? I think it's not clicking. just need to get back to the presentation. When I clicked on the video, went to that. Okay. Is that it? Aha. Okay, great. So Jeff Bezos again says, you need to deeply understand your customer, spend tremendous energy developing intuition, study, understand many anecdotes rather than only the averages you'll find on surveys. They live with a design. Jeff Bezos goes on to say, and you can find this actually in the 2017 Amazon shareholder letter if you Google resist proxies Jeff Bezos. Then he says, I'm not against beta testing or surveys, but you, the product or service owner, must understand the customer, have a vision, and love the offering. Then, beta testing and research and process can help you find your blind spots. A remarkable customer experience starts with heart, intuition, curiosity, play, guts, taste. You won't find any of it in a survey. Sound familiar? I'm looking at a former colleague from Amazon. So the theme here is all beta testing is great. We run tons of tests at Nextdoor. Surveys are great. We do surveys at Nextdoor. But at the same time, building that intuition for the human beings that you're designing for is absolutely the most important thing you can do as a product owner. So dashboards, use them with caution, right? Look at your dashboards, but they don't tell you the whole story, right? I start my morning with all our daily dashboards. I look at them. I ask lots of questions about them. I look very carefully at them, but they don't tell the whole story about what we should be doing next. They don't necessarily help you build intuition. Personas, anybody here use personas? And by personas, I mean things like fictitious people named Jenny or Jason or John or Julie. Do you know what I'm talking about? So user types are great, right? Like a user type's like, a latent user or, a frazzled mom or something like that, right? But when you actually give fictitious names and fictitious demographics, when you make up people, it actually does a disservice to your customers because your customers are real people. You don't need to make them fictitious. You don't need to make them up. You should actually put the real names and the real stories and the real photos of your customers, because then you can go back to them and ask them follow-up questions. You can challenge yourself and your own intuition. When you make up your own fictional character, that fictional character is nothing more than a figment of your own imagination. And that fictional character who's a figment of your own imagination will never challenge what you think. A real person can challenge what you think. So use real people, understand your customers, and go back to those real people so they can challenge what you think they will love and tell you maybe they don't love it so much. And finally, be careful about the metrics that you choose. This is a metric that's commonly used in the consumer software space. It's known as time in app, right? And it's a dangerous metric when it's your primary metric in your company because it doesn't, again, serve your customers. Do your customers actually have the goal of spending more time in your app? Right? How do you align your metrics to the things your customers actually care about? Right? How do you make sure that the things that you're orienting your teams around are the things your customers care about and not the things that will help you make more money in the short term? Right? So be careful about the metrics you choose and choose your metrics wisely. So at Nextdoor, one of the things that we're doing is really focusing on community vitality. Right? Because community vitality, if in the long term we build vital communities, both online and offline, we'll be able to kind of serve our customers better, our product will be more loved, and that is a healthy product experience. And another thing that we do is we spend a lot of time with our members, with our local business owners. I personally spend at least 2 days a month in the field with customers, without an agenda. I'm not asking them for feedback on the app. I'm not trying to get them to buy anything. I'm not trying to get them to use anything. I'm not trying to like convince them to do anything. I'm just sitting on their couches, in their homes, in their neighborhoods, or hanging out with them in their local businesses to see what the context of their life is like so that we can build better products and experiences for them. We're building that intuition. We're trying to see humanity outside of the internet. Humanity does not exist in the internet. It exists in the real world. And it's really important for us as product leaders to understand our customers in the real world, not just in the context of our apps. So, from academia to product. So these are 2 real bookshelves. I just took this like last night or right before I was supposed to submit these slides. And I thought it was a good window into how I think about what we're doing as product leaders. So that's my dissertation, Persons in Transition. Next to Adam Smith, Carl Polanyi, Ernst Cassirer. That's my proud shelf. That's my shelf of the things I love the most. And this is my weird Lucite Awards from Amazon. If people recognize the puzzle pieces and my patents from Amazon, and a little Influential Women in Business Award. But they're transparent. And on the other side is an essay on man, language and myth, famous utopias, which we have a lot of famous utopias right now in the tech world, and the birth of the chaotic age, which is a different one, but anyway, we can get into that. Life exposed. So this is how I think, right? The only thing that allowed me to get any of the things that are in the front here, like Women in Business Awards and Amazon patents, is the things that are behind it. The understanding of people, not just in the online world, but in the actual world. And that's it. Thank you. Do you guys want to do like a discussion, Q&A thing? Oh, thank you. Yeah? Oh, thank you so much. Anybody have comments, thoughts, arguments, disagreements? Yes.
So I have a question. So in the world of where AI is going to be playing a huge role from now, 10 years from now, so we don't know when, what do you think about this discussion we just had and the influence that product person or the chief product officers or the product managers are going to make bringing humanity or the human aspects into the products that are so AI-centric?
We define the goals. The AI does not have intention. Machines never have intention. Algorithms never have intentions. They just optimize for goals, right? Is that right, Naseem? Is that right? Okay. Sorry, she's better at this than I am. But and so we define the intention. We define the goal, and we always have to watch over the AI, always, to define the goals and understand. And we define the goals by continuing to be close to humanity in the real world, because the AI can only see the internet world. It can't see the real world. So we have a bigger role to play as product decision makers to understand the real world, what our customers are actually experiencing with our products, how it's actually affecting their lives and their life world. Look, until we plug ourselves, our consciousness into the matrix, we still all have a huge role to play in orienting what those goals are, what those metrics are, and continuing to govern the AI, right? It's a governance, it's absolutely a leadership and a governance role that we need to take, and our job becomes even more important when we have algorithms and AI kind of doing the small tweaks, right? Because they will tweak in unintended ways, and we need to understand what those outcomes and what those consequences, unintended consequences are. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
How do you define community vitality?
We were just talking about that on the way here. So do you want to talk a little about it? Okay. So community vitality, it's still in progress. So there's a great OECD report which describes community vitality, which we found, and part of that report has a good framework, which is 4 quadrants. I can forward that report to the whole group if you guys want to read it. So we're using that framework as our framework. So one of the things is there's sort of like the world of community health, which is all the online interactions, to making sure that we have civility on our platform, making sure one of the advantages that we have at Nextdoor is we've asked everybody to verify that they are who they are and they live at the address that they claim to live at. So that has made our growth less hockey stick, but then again, all of our members are verified members who are actually who they say they are. And so we want to make sure that there's a lot of like good civil engagement on the platform. On the other side, there's the online to offline experiences. And it's really important for us to measure how many of those online experiences translate to offline experiences and what those offline experiences are. So for example, we have a for sale and free section of our product. How many of you guys are Nextdoor members? Oh, those of you who aren't are missing out on so much. So many of you are, so you'll get what I'm saying. We have a for sale and free section, which is kind of like a exchange platform among neighbors. And the nice thing about our platform is this free section, it's really interesting, the kinds of things that people put on there. It's really valuable stuff, right? It's really valuable stuff, and people are just giving it away for free because they just, out of the goodness of their own hearts. And then when people pick it up, they actually have to do it in person. So a neighbor has to go and meet another neighbor face to face and have a transaction or interaction. We currently don't close the loop to measure the sentiment of, is there a thank you, is there a reply, do those people continue to communicate? In our ethnographic research, we find that many people do meet through for sale and free and then have some sort of follow-up interaction afterwards. And so how do we actually create a metric to help us track that loop of how are people connecting offline? So we're working on all of that right now. I'm going to come over here. You had your hand up for a while, I think.
I love how you talk about listening to customer anecdotes and spending time weekly with them. How do you make sure that sentiment percolates to every part of the product organization, especially organizations like growth or monetization, which are a little more metrics driven, maybe a lot more metrics driven?
All parts of our product are metrics driven, first of all. If you don't have good metrics, you can't make progress. You can't make I agree with you, but I will just say that all parts of our product and all parts of every product manager has a very clear metric that they're driving. We have a product development process that starts with OKRs. It hinges on observations, understanding what people are doing. We have regular research trips to different parts of the world to talk with members, product managers, engineers, designers, our neighborhood operations people are all invited to join on those trips whenever they have a need. Also, product teams actually, obviously plan their own trips, and we kind of enable them to do that. And then we have a jobs to be done framework for product development. So it's very hard to come up with the right jobs to be done if you haven't actually done the research. Not every project needs firsthand member research, but there needs to be some underpinning to the jobs that your product is intended to do, some sort of experiential component that you understand. Here is the qualitative or quantitative data, or ideally a mix of the two, that's actually driving the insight into why these are important jobs for our product to do. So it's part of the whole product development process. Does that make sense? Yeah. One more. Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing your story, quite a journey. I was curious, as you transition from anthropologist to being in IDEO and more on the tech side, what were the top challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
I'm going to sound like a teenager when I say this, but I felt really misunderstood. I mean, I think we all kind of feel misunderstood, right? We all feel like we have something to say. Nobody's understanding what we're saying. How do I communicate, right, what I'm trying to experience? So I think that the being like misunderstood, like people not necessarily understanding that this was actually going to lead to real product experiences that were actually going to drive the business until, at the end, right? So along the journey, along the pathway, being misunderstood. But even after you deliver, they kind of think it was a fluke and they still misunderstand, right? So I think we all kind of feel misunderstood, but I think it's only the people who continuously feel misunderstood who can actually change or shift anything, right? If you're not misunderstood, I think you're kind of just a cog in the wheel, a cog in the machine, right? Because you're not going to actually kind of change how the machine works fundamentally. So that's been a challenge, but also I think the challenges are the things that provide the friction to help the world grow, right? From the friction that you're creating. So, yeah. Thank you.